I'm Chris, I'm from Microsoft. I'm a senior program manager for developer outreach, which is too long for business cards, so I don't have one of those. I live in London, England and Stockholm, Sweden, depending on what time of the week it is and where I want to be. And if you want to find me on Twitter, it's CodePoet, where I tweet a lot, so bring some time. And I tweet about technology, movies I see, food, confusion about public spaces, all the things that happen to us day by day. And today I want to talk about progressive enhancement, because progressive enhancement is something that I've been advocating for years and years and years and years, and has been the secret identity or the secret ingredient to my success as a developer. And I share that with you because I like you, and you can do that as well. Now, progressive enhancement has a lot of confusion right now. A lot of people are giving it a bad reputation. It's too much hard work. Other people are very dogmatic about it, like it's the only thing to do, and if you use JavaScript, you hate all your users, these kind of things. And I think there's a wonderful middle ground about this. And there's an American comedian who's dead now, so he doesn't do much anymore. But he was a very pragmatic and very dry humor comedian. And one of the things he talked about was escalators, and it's called Mitch Hedberg. And he said, an escalator can never break. It can only become stairs. You could never see an escalator temporary out of order sign, just escalator temporary stairs. Sorry for the inconvenience. Sorry for the convenience. We apologize for the fact that you can still get up there. He obviously never lived in Stockholm, where the escalators are broken now for months and months, and they're discussing who has to repair them, but it's still the same fact. If the escalator doesn't work, you have stairs to go up there. If a lift doesn't work, you've got a small room that is just awkwardly standing on one floor, and you cannot do anything in it. A fun solution also of the city government of Stockholm is that they put a person at the end of the escalator that gives everybody a cup of water as soon as they arrive at the top of it. So like, let's make it safe. You just had some workout without having an Apple Watch. Amazing. But I found this a wonderful example of what progressive enhancement on the web is as well. And I wrote a blog post about this in 2012 called Stumbling on the Escalator. Because many people don't understand the concept that this is a very, very good idea to build software. You build something that works, and then you make it better according to what technology is available. Like an escalator becomes a moving stair when there's electricity, and becomes a stationary set of stairs that allows it to go up when there's no electricity. And I call it stumbling on the escalator because I find myself doing that. When an escalator doesn't work and you walk on it, you do this little thing because your body has this muscle memory of the thing moving, and it doesn't. And that's why a lot of people that come from like a world like where they're spoiled little brats like we are right now, where there's always connectivity, where there's always a great browser, they just don't understand the value of progressive enhancement because they never had to deal with being offline or being in a browser that is like Netscape 3 or something like that. Everything was working, so why should I care about these old users? Progressive enhancement is a hot topic again. There's like a weekly blog post explaining to us how it's bad, how it's good, how we should do it, how we should not do it. So it's raging right now. There's lots of stuff going on. And discussion rages on about all kinds of things. Not about progressive enhancement as an idea. It actually is about frameworks and their dependency on scripting. Angular is the big thing where everybody gets up in arms about. Like, oh my god, everything is now dependent on JavaScript. Why do we do this? Aren't all users using a modern browser is another question. Like, aren't we all on Chrome? No, we're not. We are, yes, but we're not building stuff for ourselves. But our end users are not all on a modern browser, whatever modern means. Do we still have to care about old browsers in a mobile age? Which is another one, like, why do I care about Internet Explorer 6 when everybody's on a mobile phone? Have you seen how good browsers on a mobile phone are? They're not. They're actually really terrible, and you don't even know which one it is. Shouldn't we be able to build things faster? That's another big thing as well. And I find this the most dangerous thing that we do right now. We make ourselves super effective releasing lots and lots of code in a very short amount of time, so we make our product managers happy, thinking that they're going to give us free time to do creative stuff when we release the things that we've done already. No, they don't. They just ask us to deliver more things. And when we don't have control over the products because we release them faster and better and more, then we actually release a lot of stuff on the web that's half finished and never gets maintained. All of this is important. All of the points that people are making is important. Like, should we care about old browsers? Should we cater to them? But it has nothing to do with progressive enhancement. Because progressive enhancement to me is much simpler. It's something that it goes before you even start writing the first line of code. It's, in a nutshell, use technology to enhance working solutions when and if the enhancement can be applied. And that can be as simple as having a background color and then using a background image. So you don't have a white text on a washed out white photo. So that you can read things. That means that you have a fallback font if the font cannot be loaded or takes like 2.5 minutes to load. How many websites do you load nowadays where there's no text for like 15 seconds and then poof, because they wanted to use a special font? And you're like, why don't you just use Helvetica or whatever and load the other font on demand and just show it when it has been loaded rather than making the end users wait for it? So every time you use something that works and then you enhance it, after it's been tested that it can be used, then you actually have progressive enhancement. And that's as simple as it is. In other words, build on a solid foundation. Like, don't build your house on quicksand. Probably not a good idea. Or in the middle of a river. Shouldn't be surprised if you have water in the basement then. Jump into the lake after checking it's deep enough. Probably a good idea as well. Or there's no sharks in there or something like that. But just jumping in and then dealing with it when you're in there, it's probably not a good idea after you smashed your head on the bottom. Enhance to add convenience, not to add basic functionality. And this is what, to me, JavaScript was about on the web. When I started, there was no JavaScript. I wrote everything in Perl, and I had like the page reloads, and every time somebody typed something in wrongly, they had to reload the whole page, and all the images had to load. It was really slow. And then JavaScript came around, and I could say like, if value equals nothing, please enter this form field. Amazing. Out of a sudden, half my users who had JavaScript on, and it loaded, didn't have to reload the page any longer. And that made total sense. The same with Ajax. Instead of loading the whole page, you just loaded the bits on demand, but you had the same issue that you had with loading the whole page. What happens if the thing cannot load? What happens if there's an error? What happens if it takes too long to load? Browsers fix these problems for you. Our own solutions, whenever we override what the browsers do, don't. Let's take something very, very cool right now, the self-driving car. Everybody's super excited about this. The Volvo thing, let's forget about that one that happened 2 days ago where it ran over a pedestrian, and then their PR answer was like, well, he didn't buy the pedestrian detection kit that comes with it. And you're like, what? Oh, so that's cheaper. Yeah, like. But everybody's excited about self-driving cars, especially people like Uber who don't have to pay any drivers anymore once we have these things. But it's cool. And then you see what it does, all the technology that's in there that Google has. It's very impressive. Never mind that it looks like a clown car, but that's a different story. But when you look inside the thing, and I saw it in the Silicon Valley last time I was there, there's a steering wheel. Why? This is a self-driving car. By definition, there should not be a steering wheel. Like, seems superfluous, seems like weird. But I think this is what progressive enhancement means. It's not necessarily only in the physical space. This does not only mean that you need this thing, but you need it to not feel creepy. Because if you look at like Total Recall and that Johnny Cab thing in the front, it's just like, what the hell, you know? Like, you want as a human to go in somewhere and have a steering wheel, and even just touching it gives you more trust in the self-driving car because you still feel you're in control. And we hate not feeling in control as humans, and that's why it's going to be hard to do all these self-driving smart things that do stuff for us, because I'd be freaked out by that thing if it doesn't have a steering wheel, because I want to do something in between, probably not connected at all. Same that most lift buttons, when you're in lifts and the buttons to close the door, most of the time don't do anything. They just give people the impression that they're in control so they don't freak out in a small metal cage without doing something. Oh, I haven't got that one in there, but my favorite example about the difference between progressive enhancement and graceful degradation, because a lot of people say like graceful degradation is the other option. Build something beautiful and then build something lower so people that don't have the beautiful thing get something. My lift in the London flat is broken. Well, the lift is not broken, the alarm is broken. So the alarm button doesn't do anything when you press it, which is kind of unfortunate because you build alarm buttons in there to actually set alarms off in case you get stuck. Now, the genius idea of the people that maintain my house was to put up a telephone number in there that you can call if the lift gets stuck. Now, if you know anything about physics, a Faradayan cage, which is a lift, has no connection to your phone at all. And there's no phone line in there. There's no handle or something. So that telephone number is just adding insult to injury. When you get stuck, you've got a telephone number that you cannot connect to anything. Well done. But look, we did something. It's a bit like when you do accessibility, and like we did something for blind users. Well, what about people with dyslexia? How about people that don't speak your language? How about you have to do something for every single person out there to fall back to? So don't just rely on technology and make it creepy. As developers, we always want to leapfrog ahead and innovate. We just like, why are we stuck with these terrible old browsers? Why are we stuck with that technology? I want to use Angular. I want to use these beautiful things. It makes me more effective. It makes me better. I have much more free time that I use to build more things on my computer. And we can't. When we can't, we find scapegoats. And what are the scapegoats about progressive enhancement? It's always browsers don't give us what we need. Users have outdated environments. Standards take too long. The languages of the web aren't good enough. Framework, whatever, makes me much more effective, and it does need JavaScript, so I cannot do progressive enhancement. Again, all of these things are true. For you right now, they're the most important thing, they're totally true, and there's nothing you can do about it. Because this is the web. You cannot change the things just because you want to, unless you buy every one of your end users a MacBook and send it to them, and reset it to the settings and don't allow them to change anything. I love when people ask, like, how can I stop people from resizing the font on my website? Well, don't release it on the web. That's how you do it. Release it as a JPEG. Even then they can scale it up. Users don't have outdated environments or turned off scripting because they hate you. That's always the big thing when people are like, oh, I rely on JavaScript, and only freaks turn off JavaScript, you know, like security guys and these kind of things. Like, no, they don't hate you. They don't want to break your website. They probably don't know what JavaScript is. They probably had a company that actually fixes it for them to turn off all JavaScript because it's dangerous. They have environments that they really do not care about. They just want to go and click on an icon and go on the internet and type in what the weather in Malmö is like or whatever. And I found that, again, somebody crashed into our exchange in London, so we didn't have internet for a whole week in my whole street. Again, 5 companies complaining to each other who's going to fix that. I was the only one in my whole block of flats that was complaining about this. Everybody else is using their mobile phone to go online nowadays. I was the only one like, oh my god, I have no internet. I have to talk to people and like do things physically, and this is terrible. What we see as a given as developers is not as reliable as we consider it to be. And JavaScript to me is the main point there. It's not about JavaScript being on or off. This is the state you will never encounter unless somebody turned it off or you turn it off for testing things. Stuart Langridge, good friend of mine, who has a Wikipedia entry, strangely enough, has a great website called Everyone Has JavaScript Right. He's a programmer, he designed the thing himself, so I changed the font to protect the innocent, because if you look at it right now, it's got a font called Aladdin or something like that. It's not fun to look at. But he has all these scenarios, what can go wrong when JavaScript is enabled in your website and you still might not be able to see what's going on. This final solution is like use progressive enhancement. Because there's many things that can go wrong. There can be like proxies in between that filter out JavaScript. One of the mobile phone providers in England minifies every JavaScript that goes over the line for you because reasons. And your JavaScript breaks and you just wonder, everything is fine on your end, everything is wrong on the end of the client, I didn't do anything, how does that work? Like, can your JavaScript load? Is the CDN up? All kind of like things can go wrong in that journey from like user clicks on something, your website finishes rendering. When you work on the web, you're working in the unknown. And Douglas Crockford said that at Yahoo when I used to work there, the web is the most hostile software engineering environment imaginable. He's totally right. That's why it's exciting. I see the web as a medium. I see it as TV, radio, all in one, and you're a publisher that can reach people worldwide without having to spend much money. And that's what I see the internet as, not as a software platform. It's only part of what it is. But what we do here is actually build for the unknown, be the masters of the unknown, which is a very, very cool title to give ourselves in case you want to have something on your business card soon. But for like people that come from a defined environment like native development or mainframe development, that's just freaking them out. Like, I cannot control the transport layer. I don't know what end users have. How can I ever write software like that? It's very simple. It's called an if statement. You know, you test the thing before you apply it, which sounds like, oh my god, that's complex. No, it's not. So can we please just deal with the fact that we can't and we shouldn't control our audience's environments? The web became what it is, because people can surf whatever. They can have an old Internet Explorer, they can have a Netscape browser, they can have links on a text box, they can have a Windows 10 machine on a Raspberry Pi like the JWay guys have out there. Everybody's invited. Don't block people. As soon as we would be able to control our end users, that to me would be the end of the internet. Because we don't know the users yet. Most of the new users will come in China, will come in India, will come in Africa, probably on mobile devices, probably on a terrible computer in an internet cafe. But these are the people where the growth is happening, not the Silicon Valley kids that have already 5 gadgets and don't know what to do with them. And I don't think it's right for us to pretend that we can control the end user and demand them to do stuff for us. We're a delivery service. We bring content of our clients to the end users on their devices that we don't know. We're a translator, and that is awesome. That is so much fun to do, because there's always new stuff coming up. I hate being, I used to do like interactive CD-ROMs. Fixed screen size, fixed environment. I got so bored so quickly. I'm like, I want to do a different thing. I want to have an unknown that I have to tackle. As developers, we love solving problems, and if we don't get problems to solve, we come up with problems. That's why we build frameworks and tell them one is better than the other, and it makes me 2 milliseconds faster. Progressive enhancement is not about catering to old browsers. That's when somebody says like, well, you just want to support Internet Explorer 6 pixel perfect. No, nobody should do that. Not even people who use Internet Explorer 6 know what pixel perfection means. They're just stuck in some office, chained to a desk and have to use the thing. They don't want to use it, but they have to. JavaScript in or dependence is not about progressive enhancement as well. It's just another layer of progressive enhancement. Like if your text is not readable, if your text is not properly structured, you probably don't have a web page. You just have something that you put there with like spinning animations and hope people like it. Apps versus web is not progressive enhancement either. Just because you say you have an app doesn't give you a free pass on saying like, well, now I can use all technology on this planet and everybody has an iPhone. No, they don't. People have lots and lots of Android phones, and Android phones are terrible because you don't even know which browser it's on, because Samsung might have put another Chrome in there than Google put on that thing, and HTC put yet another one in there, and they still tell you they're all the same browser. It's not about us developers at all. It's about our end users. Progressive enhancement is about delivering a great service to the users of now and the users of tomorrow. Because you build on something that works. It works now, and when something new comes around, a new API gets supported in the browser, like, I don't know, motion control or like hand gestures and stuff, you can put that on top of the already working solution. You don't have to start from scratch. You don't have to remove everything you did before, you just add to it another layer, another beautiful new environment, another beautiful way of interacting with your application, rather than like writing it from scratch because you assume that everybody has a keyboard and a mouse. Everybody assumed 800 by 600 is going to be the end of all resolutions when I started as a web developer. And these websites are now like unreadable because they didn't think about the future and they didn't think about what's coming. Let's take a look at another real-life example. I'm flying all the time. I've been in 7 countries in 10 days, speaking at 6 conferences. I don't know where I am at the moment or what I am. But I'm staying a lot at airports. And airports are interesting to look at because airport people are a bit like people on the web. People at airports are stressed, confused, they don't pay attention to things, they eat badly and are not always feeling good. They're tired, they feel rushed, they want to get things over with and get where they want to go. Others, those new to travel, are overly excited about everything and want to do things right, making mistakes because they are too eager. And that's exactly what web users are like. We think people stand in front of our website and go up and down like, oh, did you see that parallax scrolling? That is amazing. I want to throw all my money on the screen right now because that parallax scrolling, I love that they used the proper font kerning in that font and that they used 5 different fonts instead of 1 because that makes that whole website much better. Their products are much more expensive, but I'm going to spend it because those fonts were amazing. People don't care. I used to work for radio, and that's how I learned the hard way there. Like I spent half an hour running around the street interviewing people, spent 3 hours in the office cutting and pasting, like we didn't have computers, it was all like reel to reel, cutting and pasting 20 seconds for the news, what the people on the street are thinking about some political issue. I was super proud of it. People heard it in the news, forgot about 10 seconds later. And I'm like, like nobody sits in front of the radio and like, yeah, I'm going to listen to what my mom did, but that's about all. Like, Same on the web. People do not care. They're busy. They come with a purpose. They leave with a purpose. They want to do something. Or they want to be entertained. They want to look at kittens. And the more you tell them about your website, the less kittens they can watch, and that makes them sad. So what it takes for you to fly. In Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, it says like throw yourself to the ground and forget to hit it. You can try that out. It doesn't work so far. You need a ticket confirmation number, an origin airport, a destination airport, and a proof that you are you. This is all you need to fly. And in most of the cases, you don't even need the ticket confirmation number. You just show up on time and say, like, here's my passport. I have to fly to Sweden. And they're like, oh yeah, you're on the list. Good, come in, fly. What you want is a boarding pass, though. Like, that is not enough. So you need to have something that proves that you have all these things, that you were yourself, that you know the destination airport, that you're not completely drunk, that you are allowed to be on the plane. Otherwise, you have to take the ferry between Denmark and Sweden. The first thing to do would be check-in counters. That's the oldest way of doing that. And check-in counters are great because they have a lot of benefits. The benefits are it's a human to talk to, a knowledgeable human, because most of the time people put people there who know about things. Other airlines don't, but most of the people are there that know their stuff, and they can actually sort you out as well. They're like, okay, you got an aisle seat, do you really want that? Should I change it to a window seat? And I think there's nothing more important than being nice to people behind the counter because they have a terrible job. Everybody comes there who thinks they can have a way in to get some extra seat, and you're like, well, you can do something for me, right? Other people are shouting at them, like, it's a terrible job to have, but they have to do a lot of good things for you, and they can make your life miserable as well if you're not nice to them. They have up-to-date information. They can tell you normally the gate where the plane is going to take off before it's even shown on the big screens, which is a really good thing. For example, in London, if you're on a B gate, you don't want to hang out in A terminal because it's another 20-minute ride that you could just go direct to B terminal and wait there. It allows you for dropping your luggage directly at the same spot. It's one check-in for everything, and it gives a human interaction. There's no need to feel stupid. Because as much as we have computers and everything, and we love these things, end users are still scared of computers. And you can do that with security checking. When I did security workshops, I didn't scare people into things. I just told them like, oh, we have a setup, and a new security setup took me 2 hours. It's an absolute pain in the ass. If you go for lunch break, leave your computer unlocked, I can do it for you. Oh yeah, cool, yeah, I'm afraid of that as well, so you do it for me. Yay, I was in. You know, like, that's the kind of stuff that people are still worried about. And it offers flexibility on error. If you forgot something, if you didn't get the flight, and they can change it for you. It needs staffing though. The airlines have to spend money on people that are standing behind these things and give them like counseling and all kind of stuff. They're time consuming because they have a service. Everybody gets a personalized experience. They're expensive for the company as they need trained staff, and they don't scale well. That's why they cause queues, because everybody talking for like 5 minutes with the person behind the counter while you're in the queue, different story. And you want to avoid queues. That's the main thing that you want to avoid at the airport, because everybody in that queue is a liability. Everybody's in your way between you and happiness. And these people know how to delay things. Like, oh, I forgot my passport. How did that happen? You're an idiot. That's why. So make sure that you avoid the queues as much as possible. And airlines found that as well, because queues make people stressed. They shout more at the people behind the counter. So they came up with another innovation called the self-check-in ticket machine. This was introduced by Air New Zealand. Later on, Air France was the first one in Europe. And that one is really cool as well, because it makes it easier to avoid queues. Because people just go there, type a few things in, scan their passport, get their boarding pass, leave. You don't have to queue with the other people because you know what you need. You have all the information, it's all fine. It's a great offer for power users. If you know what you're doing, you go back to that thing, you spend like 2 minutes every single time and you're through and you can go through security. It allows for multi-airline use. You don't have to find the counter of your airline because you just picked it for airline as the first solution. It prevents unnecessary printouts, because that's another thing that I hate, that you run around with lots of paper that you really don't need, because you just get the plan on demand and not like the 15 printouts explaining you the security and all kind of stuff as well. They're not fault tolerant though. So if you type something wrong, it just says meh. Sorry, like you can't do anything. So it doesn't have the cleverness of somebody behind the counter saying like, is this really your number? Doesn't the last one change to something different? It has no up-to-date information. These things are always outdated. They can appear intimidating. That's why most airports have a person standing next to the check-in counter explaining people the check-in counters. Same with the self-check-in counters at supermarkets. like an ICA supermarket. It always cracks me up. It's like, oh, it's Swedish. What do I do now? Lack of a sense of accomplishment. You don't feel you've done it. You know, you print out your thing and then like, what do I do now? I really feel like I should talk to somebody in a uniform that tells me, yes, you've done right, go to the gate now. People feel like, okay, I'm not ready yet. What's going on here? Also, if you have luggage, you still have to drop it off somewhere. Then you have online check-in and mobile applications, which is the coolest thing. This is like the Rolls-Royce of checking in. And I love the other day that they asked me to upgrade for null per adult. It's not a free upgrade, it was just a bug. It was like, you know. But these things are cool because you actually have it in your pocket. So the benefits of these ones are no need to queue at all. You come to the airport with your boarding pass. You just breeze through security. You answer all the stupid questions that they have. You hope that you don't have to strip completely. And you go on your plane. It has up-to-date information. It sends me like push notifications saying like your plane is actually an hour late. It always tells me that when I'm on the way, not before I leave. So it's quite useless to get these announcements. But it means like, yeah, 1 more hour at the airport. It's easy to track past and future travels. That's another really good thing as well. If you reimburse your company, you don't have to bring the printouts and scan them and take pictures of them. You just show them your app and do an export of that and it works. Reminders, notifications, and so on. It, however, needs a turned-on phone with full battery. No charger on flights. The phone needs turning off. So on planes, you have to turn off your phone. So when you change into another flight, you have to restart your phone, which is like depending on your phone 2.5 minutes or 16 hours. Depending on which kind of old version of Android or whatever Nokia that you have. And it also means that the battery has to be there all the time. Especially some of the apps, when your phone is off, it restarts it and then it does a check on the web first before it starts the app. The old BA app didn't work offline and that was just the most stupid thing for an app. I also love that it seems like people are trained in airlines to wait until your display turns off and then try to scan it. You know, you always give it to them like, oh yeah, here's my passport, here's my phone. You're like, oh, it's off. Like, yeah, you waited 5 seconds, that's why. You know? But it's just every single time it happens, it's amazing. And then the QR code can't be read, so you have to scan, to like zoom it out. It needs a reader at the gate, at the airport gate as well. Like, yeah, Arlanda or here, or like, yeah, like civilized countries have that stuff. San Francisco airport, not so much. Because you have a reader on that thing, but the TSA guy actually wants to have a paper printout. Because if you want to use the quick fast track in security, you have to have a rubber stamp on something. And as people are not quite ready to rubber stamp your phone, or it doesn't make sense because it washes off, you have to get a paper printout every single time I fly back from San Francisco to England rather than from England to San Francisco. And of course it might clash with TSA regulations. I ran into that in Atlanta, where they asked me to keep my boarding pass with me during security while my luggage is being scanned. Where I have to keep my phone in my luggage so it can get scanned. So as I didn't have a boarding pass, I couldn't go through security because my phone was not paper. So I had to go back to the counter and actually print out a paper thing. Yeah, it's not the best people in the TSA thing. Now, great airlines offer fallbacks and reward you for using the app. Airlines want you not to go to the counter and pester their people. They want you to be as effective as you want to be. So they allow you to go back in case your phone dies or the app is not up to date or you got an upgrade and the app doesn't show the right thing anymore. You can go to a kiosk and you can type it in, or you can go to a counter and you can work it out. Then of course you got selfish airlines, like budget airlines, that charge you for a printout of the paper. They either ask you to print it out at home, which is like 5 A4 pages with lots of advertisements for the city that you're going to, or they actually charge you, like Ryanair does, €45 for the printout of your pass. I was in Italy and 24 hours before you can check in online. I was completely offline in Italy. I didn't have any roaming. The wireless of the conference didn't work, so I didn't check in. And I was like thinking in my foolish youngness that it would be fine. I just go to the counter and I say like, hey, I forgot to check in. Sorry about this. Can I get my boarding pass? And he's like, yeah, sure. You can get your boarding pass if you pay €45. And I'm like, what? Yeah, like, what paper is this? Like, is this like gold paper or something? Like, it's like, do you have like tears of children as your ink, or what's going on here? You know? And he's like, no, this is our policy. And I'm like, okay. So yeah, you can check in 2 hours before on your mobile device. And I was like, okay, sod it. I'm going on roaming and I'm going to do that now. And I tried to check in, and the date picker was so complex on the Ryanair app. I was like messing around. Instead of just my number, my name, and where I'm flying to, which is all that's needed to get my boarding pass, it asked me for all the dates and pick the destinations from a massive drop-down list rather than typing it in, and so on and so forth. So in the end, I was 34 seconds late that I couldn't check in 2 hours before my flight. So it's like, oh, that's unfortunate, so you gotta pay the 45 euro. And I'm like, okay, Microsoft card, you can pay. No, I can't take that money. You have to go to the other side of the airport and queue up at the ticketing booth to get to pay there. So I went to the other side of the airport, queued up there. Remember, you want to avoid queues. And yeah, paid for it, came back, queue again. The guy who was not there anymore, so I had to explain to his colleague what happened, and then I finally got on the plane having to run through it. So they force you to use the app, but then they put these random things on it, like you only got 2 hours to check in, and you only have 24 hours before, and you have to enter all kind of details. So it's like a terrible company that is selfish because it wants to make money with you doing wrong things. Don't be a selfish airline. Don't make people unhappy. Look at him. This is not what you do to people. And that's what you do if you don't progressively enhance. But if you instead build something and expect your users to be happy with it and have the coolest, fastest computers and actually shout at them for doing it wrong. Like my favorite is like error messages like, this didn't work because your browser's not good enough. No, I'm sorry, you made that mistake. And again, people are unhappy about computers, they're scared of computers. Whenever I did user testing and I found like a database error on screen, and people are like, oh, I must have done something wrong. You cannot do anything wrong to cause a database error unless you try a SQL injection or something like that. It's like, it's not your fault. It's okay, don't worry about it, my fault, I take it on. But people are like, oh my god, magic boxes with keyboards on them, I'm doing something stupid here. So how does progressive enhancement work for you? What is in it for me? Like, I keep talking about it and it's a good thing. My colleague Aaron Gustafsson, which is not Swedish, just American with a Swedish name, wrote a great article about the true cost of progressive enhancement, where he showed that people not progressively enhancing had to pay a lot more money when new form factors came out, when new phones had to be supported, when new tablets had to be supported, and so on and so forth. And other clients that did a progressive enhancement didn't have to spend any extra. It was like 10% extra more effort to make it work on all these other new devices. This is Google without CSS. And as a designer or as a web developer, I'm like, oh god, that's terrible, what's going on here? You know, as a traveler, I love this. Because I'm always at like hotel Wi-Fi that pretends to be online but only lets like every fifth byte through after it proved that it's worthy and things like that. So I'm happy that I don't need to load the whole CSS, the whole JavaScript and everything, but I know, hey, that's Google, there's a search box, I probably can type some stuff in here and press Google search and find stuff. That's cool. It doesn't have a JavaScript spinner that spins for 15 minutes without doing anything else. It shows me what it is. It's not broken, it's not beautiful, but it's not broken. The same way, when you turn off JavaScript, or if JavaScript didn't load for some reason because the proxy filtered it out or whatever, you could just type in bdocs in Google, which is the best website on this planet, and you get the web results. If you have JavaScript enabled, on the other hand, you just start typing in bdocs and you get the experience that you expect with like automatic, like it gives you words that you might want to look for, it already changes the URL up there, and you get the beautiful, rich experience with all the Google Plus integration that you ever use, maybe. But I love that. Like, it works. And it's better if I have a better environment, rather than like, I need the better environment to be part of it. You got to be this high to ride. This is not what we should be doing on the web. I wonder also if a search box that stays in the middle without JavaScript, instead of one that just starts jumping up there, might be better for people with dyslexia. Because if I'm confused about changes on the screen, this thing jumping around and giving me offers might be a confusing thing. Would be interesting to research that as well. But this protects Google's main business case. Google's main business case is you searching for stuff, they show you ads. As simple as that. The rest of the innovation that happens in Google, and there's a lot of it, it's a great company, the rest of the innovation was funded by that principle. So they want to make sure that it can show you ads after you did a search. So they made sure it works without JavaScript. They didn't make it reliant on like you have to use Chrome and you have to use JavaScript. Using progressive enhancement is writing truly web-native code. The web, as it is, the web technologies that we're using, by definition, are actually progressively enhanced. And XHTML, for example, was considered evil. When XHTML came out, or XHTML2, when W3C said, that's the end of the internet, this is the best thing ever, please use it, people went up in arms because that happened. One single XML error and the page was not displaying. It broke the internet, it broke the web. And this might not you being stupid in your HTML, this might be an ad that has an unencoded ampersand in it, or a URL that somebody typed in that had an unencoded ampersand in it. And we don't want people to see this. Remember, people are scared by error messages. You probably saw that Facebook post where somebody opened the developer tools by chance, and then she's like, oh my god, my internet, well, he or she, I don't know, my internet split in half and there's some cyber text going on telling me that there are children forced to do something, because the error message was like, it was an XUL error in Firefox saying like the child nodes were forced into a display block. It's like, they're forcing children into the block, is that the internet police asking me to help them? And we laugh about this, but I love that this person thought like, oh my god, I have to do something. People ask me to save the children, and I love this. But we don't want our users to get these messages. We don't get our users to get XML parsing error, what's going on there. I have no idea what's going on. And that's why we invented HTML5. HTML5 is lenient about these things. It's like if there's an HTML error, it just goes on and does something with it, tries to close the p tag for you, goes on without making the end user suffer for your mistake. HTML and CSS are designed to be fault tolerant. Like if a browser doesn't understand an element you put in there, it just goes meh and doesn't display it. That is a very, very interesting little thing that Jeremy Keith did the other day. You might not know data list. Data list is an autocomplete for an input box. So if you have an input element and you type something in, it would give you the autocomplete. If you type T, it shows you television, radio, newspaper. You know these autocomplete combo boxes, like the one that Google had on the top. You can do that in HTML now just by data list and option. And you connect it with a list sources and an ID sources on the data list. Now, what about browsers that don't support it? You know, like old and terrible browsers that people shouldn't be using, like Safari Mobile. You can put a select name source in, and for those browsers, data list is not understood, but select is. So now you have a label collected by a select box, which allows you to choose the thing, and if other, please specify. So if data list is supported, this text doesn't show up, and the select element doesn't show up, because both are illegal inside a data list element according to the specifications. The data list can only contain option elements. Whereas like in a browser that doesn't understand data list, this one gets deleted, and the rest gets displayed. So everybody wins. And that's the kind of stuff that is really, really interesting to look into HTML. Default tolerance can be a great thing for you, because non-support is as good as support. If you can reliably say that something cannot be displayed, like a compass pointing south, fine, just go in the other direction. It totally works that way. JavaScript, on the other hand, is not fault tolerant. That's why when there is an error, we just see it in the console, in the error console, but the end user just sees a spinner for the 15 minutes and wonders what's going on. And isn't that how we're breaking the web? We said XHTML was too strict. Like if there's one error, then nothing works any longer. One error in JavaScript, then nothing works any longer. And there's many, many ways your JavaScript can have an error, because it doesn't matter which of your scripts break. Because it just says at the end of it, like I can't do this, sorry. Capability testing means you never deliver broken experiences. And capability testing is a fancy word for if thing, do thing. The if thing is the most important bit here, instead of just accessing thing and hoping it's accessible. That applies to anything, local storage, app cache, whatever you want to use in JavaScript. It's a very simple way of dealing with it. Of course, you don't want to test for all of it, because otherwise you have like a big if statement with every JavaScript function or every API that you're using in your function. So the BBC came up with a cutting the mustard, as they called it, very British term. If query selector in document, local storage in window, and add event listener in window, that's a modern browser, let's add JavaScript functionality. Even better, let's load JavaScript functionality on demand. Let's lazy load it instead of just putting it in the page for the browsers who don't understand it. So that's a very, very simple way to not give old browsers JavaScript, and that's progressive enhancement. If you build an HTML page that works, like the search box of Google, you don't need to worry. You don't need to test in those things any longer because they don't get the code that you write. That's amazing, because otherwise you would have spent a lot of time testing in VMs and all kind of crap. Jake Archibald went even further. He said, like, if visibility state in document is not true, then just return. That actually filters out IE less than 10 and all the Android WebKits. So only the cool Android Chrome-based, Blink-based things in the 10% of Android devices out there running Lollipop. Of course, there's a danger that you test one thing and you assume that others work. So sometimes you want to nest those. So for example, in say like invisibility state in document and service worker in navigator, then do this. So you can even nest that cutting the mustard and nest these capability tests rather than just having one of them and then assume the rest and still get errors. You can even do that for functionality of upcoming languages. ES6 is the next iteration of, well, the current iteration of JavaScript that gives you lots of features that people that come from Java and real developers with like beards and suspenders want to have, like classes and like fixed typing and these kind of things. And there's a capability test at featuretest.io that is just a library that allows you to check what the browser can do and then use the functionality of ES6 in that browser. To a degree, I think that's better than transpiling it, because with transpiling, you write in this new functionality, you write this new language, but you don't get the memory optimization and all the benefits that the browser has that support it, because in the end, it just converts it to normal JavaScript. With this one, you can use the functionality in the browsers that actually support it and reap the benefits, and not give it to the ones that don't understand it. So let's get ready for the next new thing, because we were just at BTConf in Germany, and this PPK gave a talk about the plural of chromium is chromia, where he explained how many Chrome browsers there are in this planet, and different iterations and different ways, and one of them is always broken. So if you test for capabilities, then you don't have that problem. You don't assume that things work. You just test that they do work. And it liberates us from browser support issues. There's browserhacks.com, which gives you CSS and JavaScript ways to detect certain browsers and give extra functionality to them. Sometimes you have to do that. If a client is really like, oh, that's 5 pixels off and my wife doesn't like it, so I'm not going to pay your product, fair enough. But if you can avoid this, please avoid it, because we have so much crap on the web. Working for a browser, it's amazing how much things we have to do because people wrote really bad code detecting for one browser only. The way we built Microsoft Edge now, the new browser that's coming out of Windows 10, is we took Internet Explorer 11, we threw out all the crap that's only Microsoft only, that nobody needs anymore, and then we gave it the user agent of Chrome, and we served the biggest 40,000 pages in the Blink engine. Realizing how much is Chrome only and what we had to do to be a browser that of the modern web that works on the modern web. Just supporting standards isn't good enough because people build far too many white buttons with gradient backgrounds that are WebKit only. So we had to do these kind of things. So please stop doing these kind of detecting of browsers, because it's crazy. Browsers can't even be properly detected because they lie to you. The user agent is like this massive thing of something by now. Let's stop rat race and concentrate on building working, sturdy solutions. I'm getting tired of like having to use a new library every day, use a new invention, like, yeah, you're doing it wrong, but at the same time, yeah, we keep it moving. This is innovation. We're doing something amazing here. Enjoy what browsers can do when you test for capabilities. CanIUse.com is my happiness place right now, where I go in every 2 days and I type something in and I see more and more things becoming green. I'm like, ooh, browsers do that now. I can finally use it. This is amazing. Like, and sometimes it's funny things like the ambient light sensor in the browser, which is great for mobile phones to switch your maps from black to white, from white to black, and so on, and your Kindle reader as well. It's now available on desktop. It used to be in Firefox for a long time. It's now in Edge as well, and I think Chrome is supporting it as well. Which means you get a value from 0 to 20,000 when you put your hand on top of your camera. And the camera doesn't have to be on. The sensor is always on because it also powers the backlit keyboard. So if you want a random number between 0 and 20,000, read that thing out. I used that to generate crypto keys. Instead of just mouse movements, I use the ambient light sensor, so everything in the browser is something cool that you can do with it. Browsers can't get better if we need to cater to old mistakes. That is shit. Your device is not supported. We're sorry this browser isn't supported. Please view this site on Chrome. No. Best viewed in Internet Explorer at 800 by 600 pixels is what kept us back for like 10 years. Don't repeat this because a browser is fancy right now. And I don't care if that's Firefox, Chrome, Microsoft Edge, or Opera. If you cater to only one browser, you better work for that company and it's an internal product. Otherwise, you just pissed off people on the web because they don't want to change. A lot of people don't use Chrome or don't use a certain browser because it's actually the better browser, but because it came bundled with another piece of software. If you install Adobe Reader on Windows, it tells you like, oh, you don't need the plugin if you use Chrome. So a lot of people download Chrome because of Adobe Reader. It's hilarious. We can get better if we focus on delivering working solutions to our users. Focus on the user. Focus on what goes in your product, what gets out of the product in the end. And this is where the whole thing spins back. Check encounters, to me, are the static version of the product using HTML and CSS. That never breaks. That might look a bit odd with the CSS, a bit iffy. Of course, you can break the website with CSS by overlaying things randomly as well, but don't do that. But it always works. When everything else goes wrong, this will work. And you can totally find to do that with Node.js or JavaScript or whatever cool thing you want to do, as long as in the end there's some server-side rendered HTML and CSS there. Fine, go wild. I mean, I use Perl, PHP, Java, whatever you want to use there. The self-service ticket machine is progressively enhanced with JS and capability testing, so that's a better desktop experience. Responsive design, something that loads the things on demand, just making it responsive and then putting everything in and hiding the things you don't use is not good enough. Think about like, do people really need that interface on their mobile when it only makes sense on a desktop? And then you got the mobile app, which is the high-end solution for most capable environments, which could, of course, be a hybrid app if you take your HTML page and you package it up for iOS and Android. Manifold.js is a great new product for that creates binary formats for iOS and Android of HTML5 applications. PhoneGap, of course, is a really good solution as well that has been around for a long, long time. PhoneGap just released a new plugin called Content Sync, and that is the best thing ever. What Content Sync allows you to do is, get this, change an app after it's been installed on iOS without going through the marketplace. You can send a payload as a zip file and unzip it and change the JavaScript files into your application after it's been installed. We have React Native to thank for that, because they were the first ones to do it, and Facebook is big enough so Apple can say, okay, we change your terms and conditions for you. And now PhoneGap does that as well. So we have the benefit of the evergreen website, evergreen web app, but in a packaged format on iOS and Android. And the end users don't have to be any the wiser and don't have to uninstall and reinstall the app every 2 days because some new functionality comes in. So this is really, really nice. That is broken now. I love that. As we live in a virtual environment, we don't have any hardware costs like airports do. Airports had to spend money for these machines and then for the readers and then for creating the app and so on and so forth. As we're on the web, it just means putting an if statement in there around the next thing that we build. We write the code anyways, we just don't push it out yet. All we need to put is an understanding of the basic of the web and its technologies, and there is still nothing better than developer.mozilla.org for that. That's where all the information goes. That's where I still write all my documentation, although I work for Microsoft. They're okay with that. Because it's a wiki and it is maintained, it has editors. So please go there, and every time you go to W3 schools, God kills a kitten. Developer.mozilla.org is the place where the real information lies, and not the fast answer that gives you the answer but not the why. All you need is a bit of honesty as well. This is what I tweeted the other day, like, you need JavaScript to create fast, maintainable web products like you need ducks to stop ponds from filling up with bread. We put this stuff on the web, and then we say, oh, it's necessary. It's like, it's our own fault, it's our own doing, it's our own mistake. Our end users should not have to suffer because we want to use technology to make us more efficient. It's not that there would be bread in the ponds if there's no ducks in there, because even old ladies wouldn't throw bread in. But we do it on the web. We just put everything there because it works for us on our fancy machines. And if end users can't use it, it's okay. No, it's not. 2 megabyte a page. The average web page, not website, is 2 megabyte with 100 HTTP requests. I was in Albania the other day, where roaming on EE in England costs me £12 for 10 megabyte. Meaning loading your web page costs me €3.23. It better be worth it. Nikola Tesla, when we met back then, said it the best way. We crave for new sensations, but soon become indifferent to them. The wonders of yesterday are today common occurrences. So if we get excited about our new frameworks and, we need to build apps, in half a year's time it's going to look silly. Remember Flash? Remember Flex? Remember Java applets? We just turned them off in our browser. We got 300 emails, people complaining that their web products are broken now. People still use applets. But they're silly to us now, but back then, the best thing ever. And that's exactly what's happening right now. The web is continuously moving on, and the only thing you can do is prepare for it with an if statement around your stuff. That's all I had, so thanks very much.